we're gonna take one of Dollar Tree's 8x10 frames and transform it into a beautiful fall decor wall piece. Now we're gonna need to remove the innards of it because we're not gonna be using any of that. Instead, we're gonna need to grab one of Dollar Tree's flat 8x10 artist canvases. We're going to be using this as our decoupage base, and believe it or not, since it's so thin, it fits perfectly in this frame. I don't really care for the color on our frame, so I'm just going to take some of my multi-surface paint and give it a nice coat. You could absolutely paint this whatever color you would like, or leave it just the way that it is. I wanted to give mine a little bit of that farmhouse feel. I rarely do that style, but felt a little farmhousey for this fall decor piece, and added some black paint as well for distressing. You can distress as heavy or as light as you want. I went a little heavy and then came back in with some more white paint to kind of dim it down. It's completely up to you. For our decoupage portion, I'm going to be using my TDS Creative Decoupage tissue paper. This is called Scripts. Now, if you don't want to use this tissue paper, you could absolutely take the idea, remix it, use some newspaper, you could use a book page, just create yourself some sort of background that has like that script dictionary type style, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. So I cut that down to size and then took one of my TDS Creative artist brushes in the fan style to apply a layer of Mod Podge. But of course, I had to get completely grossed out. Why? Oof. Oh my gosh. I want to throw the whole project out. I spared you the cleanup process. You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyhow, I took a layer of Mod Podge and applied it all over to our canvas, and then applied our tissue paper right down over top. You could use cling wrap or a brayer, whatever you would like to attach your piece. I'm just using my fingers to smooth this down. It didn't matter to me if it had that rustic feel with a couple wrinkles around it. While that was drying, I went in my stash and grabbed some of these floral bits I had from Dollar Tree from last year, and I thought that the colors went perfectly with the background and the frame. So I cut them down to size and then just grabbed some twine to wrap around the bottom so we could hide those ugly little stem pieces. I do recommend using some tacky glue or Titebond Quick and Thick to glue this down. I just use a little bit of hot glue to pop mine down for the video's sake, but absolutely if you're going to be hanging this in your house or reselling your piece, make sure you're using something like this to get that long lasting hold so your projects last. Once that was attached, I just grabbed some of my vintage lace and tore a section off. You could use fabric for this or burlap, whatever you would like. Just make sure it's thin enough to fit in that frame, because literally this canvas perfectly goes in this frame. So too much is going to create some resistance while you're trying to attach it back down. Put whatever hanger you would like on the back. I just set mine up for staging up against the wall with a couple little pieces around it, and think this fall decor piece turned out so good. For this busted canvas, grab yourself an adorable stencil. This one has a little gnome in it. Tape it down in the center. Make sure it's small enough that you'll be able to see the entire thing in the center of your busted canvas. And then grab you some texture paste. Now, this is my own special mix that I create and I keep off to the side. It usually stays pretty good for about 3 to 5 days. And I use it often enough that I go through it pretty quickly. I'm adding a little bit of black paint just to tint it, and then I'm just going to spread it all over this stencil. When you're all done, peel that one off and set it to the side to dry. For the canvas part, I grabbed a piece of my TDS Decoupage tissue paper. I wanted to do something bright and fun since we had a cute little gnome on here and it was a solid color. So I just cut out a section of where the diamonds are, and then I grabbed my Mod Podge and put a nice layer all over the front of the canvas. If you don't want to use Mod Podge, grab your glue, grab tacky glue, whatever. Just apply your paper or your tissue paper, your napkins, down onto the canvas. For the inside of the back of the canvas, I went with yellow. I know, not my typical, right? But I thought the color would really bring out the entire piece. And if I'm being completely honest, this, of all the busted canvases that I created, was the easiest one to do. And I also want to let you know, people, that this is the easiest fold, not necessarily to the side, because if you put it all the way on the side, it's a little bit more difficult. But just a single flap. See how I'm not actually spinning the busted part to create like a circle and then fold? I'm just kind of doing a one flap over. That is the easiest fold for me out of all the different folds I have tried. So if you're looking for something simple and easy to practice with starting these, this fold I highly recommend. For this project, we're going to be using this beautiful rice paper design. It is A4 in size, and we're going to create some wall decor with them. On a recent trip to Dollar Tree, I found these cool wall hanging pieces, little plaques that already have a hole in the back of them. I thought these would be really cool to decoupage. I have never decoupaged these before, and so our rice paper pops. I'm going to give it a nice coat of white paint. There are a little bit of a sheen, or there is a little bit of a sheen on here. It's a good idea to kind of give these a rough sand down if you want to. I am going to grab me a little piece of 240 grit and my little finger sander. Now, I got this off Temu. But people, recently I was in Walmart, and I think I even posted it on the community tab. They have these at Walmart with the actual little pieces here, your sander bits, for like $5. So anybody interested, you struggle to find these, because I am asked all the time in the comments where I got this from, and I know Temu doesn't always have them. So Walmart. Make sure you wipe off the excess. You don't want none of those crusty bits getting in your paint, and then you're good to go. Knocking off the sheen just really helps your paint stick better. But if you have like a multi-surface, which these are 3 paints that are my go-tos, and they're all different in price range, but I love to share them. One is Waverly. I know a lot of yous don't have this available at Walmart all the time, but I love sharing this paint because it's extremely budget friendly, and this folk art multi-surface, which always works amazing for me. I even use this on glass. The directions on the back here also talk about how and what you can use it on. And then my other go-to that I get from Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Designs is this DIY paint, and I am so in love with this. People, I cannot make this stuff up. As I'm painting this off camera and I'm using my heat gun, and I notice a bubble popping up. Y'all see that? Can you see that bubble? So that's when I realized this, look at this. It's a sticker. Nothing I do is ever like, just when I know y'all watch me and you'll be like, you make it look so easy, but do I? Because this is what's happening all the time behind the scenes. I got most of it off, and now I'm just gonna like pop a 80 grit on here, and that should really knock off whatever. For this one, no problems, no bubbling, so we're just gonna leave that alone. We're gonna put it to the side and just let it do its thing and hope that that one doesn't start to bubble, because I cannot decoupage over something like that. We are gonna have to get this down, then I'm gonna paint over it. I'm gonna save y'all the drama with all of that. But in the event that you purchase these from Dollar Tree and you go to do a DIY and you did not know that the top was a sticker bit, let me let y'all know it's a sticker bit. And for prepping, if you paint over it, it's possible it could bubble, but then this one didn't. So keep in mind, and this is how I'm tackling it: heat gun, sandpaper, and then we're going to paint it and pretend like it never happened. Ta-da! Look at that. All right, we are ready to decoupage. I'm going to use a fan brush for our application. If you're not familiar with me, this is just something I like using and what I use like 80% of the time whenever I'm decoupaging. I personally like how thin the fan brush gets right here at the top. So if there's little gaps or anything I notice, it gets in there really well without smooshing any of the papers. A lot of people will ask why I do that, especially with napkins as thin as they are. This really allows me to do that without having the thickness of a regular paintbrush. Mind how crusty this one is. But see how thick it is? It will actually like push your paper or your napkin or whatever you're trying to decoupage when you're trying to shove just a little bit of extra medium underneath of something. I don't have that problem using these. Use whatever medium you would like. I'm just going to use some good old Mod Podge for this. I'm going to cut the designs down to size, leaving a little bit of hangover. We can absolutely sand down any excess around the piece. If you're new to decoupaging, rice paper is extremely forgiving. So a lot of times you can, if it's a smaller project like this, you can for sure Mod Podge the whole thing and make sure it's thin, not, what is that, hair? Get out of there. All the time, like hair. Anyhow, you can absolutely Mod Podge the whole thing. Normally, whenever I'm doing a napkin, I like to say less is more, because if you do it in small sections, you have less opportunity of bubbling. And for a project like this, you could absolutely do the iron-on method as well. If you're not familiar with that, I can link my how to iron-on method video below for you. I'm not going to do that for these projects. We are just going to slap our medium on down and then place our rice paper. If you have a scraper of any sort that you want to use, you go right ahead. I'm just going to use a little card. These come in my transfer kits for my dry rub on transfers. I just happen to have this sitting here. And now I'm just going to allow this to dry on the side. And I sanded this down off of camera to save y'all your viewing time. And now I'm just putting a little coat of Mod Podge over this to seal it. You absolutely, I would recommend waiting till the next day so it has an opportunity to cure just a bit. That helps reduce wrinkles. For the sake of time, just so you also see that you can do it afterwards, I am doing this, it's about 2 hours afterwards, and you'll see the wrinkles are minimal, but I'm also doing a super thin layer. And a lot of times when I do sealers with my decoupage, I do like 3 layers, but they're super thin, and it just helps to reduce anything wrinkling back up. Of my favorite fall theme wood rounds that I found on Pinterest, and I'm like, Dollar Tree has these new wood rounds I can kind of incorporate into this. I have an awesome idea for this piece, and we're gonna need some popsicle sticks to create our little, you know, our little wood banner thing. And let's not forget our napkin, because you know we need a napkin on this joint. Now, I didn't have a Hello Fall, but I did have a harvest. Okay, I did have a harvest. So I'm like, we're going to just use this. First things first, I had to make sure that I put our little popsicle sticks in the right place and make sure that they were large enough that they were going to accommodate the size of our word here. So I took a little painter stick and just measured things up, put a little line where it made sense at the bottom, and then I did the same exact thing for the top. If you have never decoupaged a napkin, it's always important to get those sneaky layers off your napkin because you want to just use the top decorative layer. It is really hard to get Mod Podge to attach through any sneaky layers to hold on our decorative layer. It can be done. Oh, it can be done, but it's a little tiresome. People, there is such a detailed section around the bottom here. I'm taking a little bit of water on a paintbrush and we are going around tracing that lasered pop out of the pumpkins and then pressing it down to separate the napkin to just allow us a shape that fits perfectly around our pumpkins. I'm not gonna lie, this is gonna require some patience, all right? I might be making it look easy, but we're at 6 times speed here, okay? That's all I'm gonna say about that. When I was done with the bottom section, I then drew a line right where our print flipped upside down. So this way I could have that meet up with where our little popsicle sticks are gonna go, and then I could flip it right side up so we could use this portion at the very top of our wood round here. When I was happy with those, I just kind of tossed them to the side because they got to dry anyway before we can go Mod Podging them up. They had water all on them. And I painted the inside of the pumpkins. Now this was the only one that really popped out, so it was super easy to just kind of stay in the little laser cut and paint our pieces. The other two, not so much. I also made sure to kind of add a little bit of shading, and you can skip that step. Like if you don't want to add shading, obviously don't add shading. I just decided to pop a little bit in there because why not? I already spent several hours painting another pumpkin this day. Well, not several hours painting, but you know, it's too much time on one project. However, I thought these turned out pretty good. I was really happy with the end result here. I was like, this is nice. To apply our napkin, I'm just going to use some matte Mod Podge and a fan brush. I like to use fan brushes whenever I'm using a napkin because they're super thin at the tip and it allows me to really smoosh them in there when there's sections that are attached and there's not. First, though, I had to take this tiny little piece to really get in around these crevices to meet up with the fan brush. So this way I didn't get Mod Podge all over the sections that I didn't want it. So we didn't have napkin bits attached all over on the pumpkin where we didn't want it. So this was a little tedious because I also like to make sure that my sections of my napkins meet up before I start applying another section of the napkin. So I had to create like this line that made sense to me where I was going to stop and then start again. And here's one of the reasons, like I said, why I love the fan brush, because you can really push it up in where this ends and get a nice seal attached right up to where your last attachment was with the napkin decoupage. To press it down, I grabbed my little sponge. This is a dry sponge, and I'm just going to plop it right on down and press the napkin in. It's also going to absorb any Mod Podge that is coming through the napkin, so this way we have a nice little bonded section. Once this dried up a little bit, I decided to just kind of pull off some of our edges where we were putting our popsicle sticks, so this way we could get to business. I painted those a brownish black color and then set them off to the side to dry, and then went ahead and painted all our little lines around our pumpkins here. And I'm taking different colors, really brown, black. You guys probably can't notice on the camera, but I noticed, okay? I noticed. And I decided to do the front pumpkin a brown and then bring on in a permanent black magic marker to do the lines around the other two pumpkins. For me, I felt like this was just going to give us a little bit more depth with the color variations, and I also felt like I might have made a little bit of a mess if I tried to paint in between these lines. By this time, our little wood pieces are all dried up, so I just lined them right on up where we had them all sectioned off to go. And I do want to quickly say, because I get asked this often, do you go over and seal the decoupage? Yes, but I wait for it to completely dry before I put a layer over top. I trimmed around the popsicle edges to make sure that they were rounded with our little wood round here, and I felt like something was missing. So I grabbed some little trim pieces that I had here. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough. So I had to kind of wing how I wanted this to go. So I put this one on the bottom, and then I took the smaller piece and cut it into two pieces because I knew I was putting a messy bow on the center of the top of this. So that was going to hang down and cover the fact that we did not have any of the trim. Now you, of course, obviously put two pieces. If I had a long enough piece, I would have just put, to go across the whole thing. But, I didn't have that, so I'm working with what I got here. I was recently sent an awesome little box with a bunch of goodies in it from a subscriber. Thank you very much, Rhonda. And one of the things I talk about very often is I am horrible at bows and etc., etc. So she was kind enough to send me this awesome bag along with a bunch of other stuff that just had cut up little pieces of fabric, which is amazing because my favorite bow is a messy bow. So I schmoozed around in here, grabbing a couple pieces that I thought would look cute with the other pieces that I was going to cut up. I grabbed some Dollar Tree ribbon, I grabbed some burlap, and then I just kind of started piling each piece on top of each other. And I grabbed a stapler and started stapling them. You guys can always attach, a lot of people use the little wire pieces, the floral wires, but staples work just good for me. And I just started stapling this right in the center. I added a little flower on the top, and I love how this turned out. People, if you have items like this laying around in your stash and you never know what to do with them, this is the perfect time of year to get some ideas for that. We can turn them into pumpkins, especially if they have this square shape. You just gotta disassemble them first. Then you're gonna need to bring on in the finger sander. Well, maybe not for all of the pieces like this, but these in particular, we needed to give a little sand down. So I just knocked that sheen off the top and then grabbed my multi-surface paint and applied 2 layers over the top. So we had a nice base to cover up the T, E, and the A, or the EAT, however you would like to spell that out. Next, grab you a napkin or some tissue paper or rice paper or whatever you would like to decoupage onto your pumpkins. I'm going to be using this beautiful piece right here I had in my stash, and I'm just gonna tear off the corner and rip off that top decorative layer because we don't need those sneaky layers on the back, we just want the top. And for our medium, I'm just gonna be using some good old Mod Podge. Feel free to use whatever medium works best for you. For the application, I'm gonna take one of my TDS creative artist brushes in the fan style and just apply a thin layer. Whenever I decoupage with napkins, I like to encourage less is more, okay? Napkins, depending on a napkin, they're not all created equal. And if they're super thin, they're really easy to destroy. I covered our pumpkins different ways for each one. And as I was applying them, I grabbed myself a little sponge. This is a dry sponge. I picked these up in a pack from Walmart, and I'll cut them in half. Couple people lately been saying they find them at Dollar Tree. I get mine from Walmart, so I just like to share that from you. You get your sponges wherever you would like to get your sponges. I like to use a sponge when I'm decoupaging with a napkin to help flatten the piece out if I'm not doing the iron-on method, because any excess Mod Podge that sops up through the napkin, the sponge will absorb it, and it helps to avoid destroying your napkin. It also helps to minimize wrinkles if you care about the wrinkles. Some people do, some people don't, and it really, for me, always depends on the project that I'm creating. You'll notice here that I am putting the napkins on differently. Each one of our little pumpkins we're creating, I'm putting the napkin on in a different section because we're going to add a little transfer over top of 2 of these for an extra added accent. I did allow these to dry though and then put another layer of Mod Podge just so that way the transfers went on correctly. I'm just going to cut off 2 little sections of this lace transfer and apply onto different areas of the pumpkins that have the little bit of white on them. And you could absolutely skip this part if you would like. You could use 3 different napkins. There's so many different ways that you can create a little cohesive collection when you're decoupaging something. You can also seal over your transfers if you would like once they're completely dry. I didn't for this project. When I was happy with everything, I just used my sander to trim off all the excess. Now for our stems, I'm going to be using some wine bottle corks and taking some of my tacky glue and some hot glue to attach them right onto the top. I did cut these down to size so that way no 2 were exactly a match. It gave them a little bit extra character. And then grab some messy moss to add in for some accents around the edges and tied it off with some twine to cover up where the separation with the moss and the cork and the pumpkin are. Fall decoupage project, we're going to be using this beautiful A4 size rice paper to make some coasters using some towels that I picked up from Home Depot in case anyone is wondering. And we're going to be doing the iron-on method for these. I'm using dishwasher safe Mod Podge and applying a nice thick layer to the top of both of these tiles. While they're drying, I'm just going to cut down the sections that we want for our coasters. You can absolutely do this however you would like. I'm just going to take some scissors and we can always sand off the excess. Since our designs are a little smooshed in here with this paper, I feel like just cutting them down with scissors is just going to give me a better trim. Now it's time to bring on in the iron. I'm not used to saying that without like doing a voiceover. We're gonna also need some parchment paper. I am asked often like what's the difference between wax paper or parchment paper. Parchment paper is for heat, right? Parchment paper is for heat and wax paper is to help prevent sticking. While the parchment paper also helps with that, it can prevent a number of things. It can help prevent your iron sticking to the Mod Podge, sticking to the design. It can help the design from bleeding. I've had on decoupage paper, I've had rice paper, I've had napkins, oh my goodness, especially napkins, burn, or the ink will attach to the iron. So there's just a bunch of reasons that you want to remember to have some parchment paper. And whenever I am doing coasters, I really like using the iron-on method because it gives us the best finish. Place our parchment paper right over our piece, holding it in place so it doesn't move. And then I personally like to take the, I don't even have it on. Yep, you guys are watching me for tutorial directions. I literally want you to know that while that's heating up, I'm just sitting here with my hand holding the parchment paper in place. This is why I tell y'all, like, learn from my mistakes. If you come to the DIY struggle for anything, just don't do what I do. I say that, but you know what I mean. Learn from the struggles, okay? Other than that, I got pretty good tips, miss it. I like to take the iron and start at one end and work my way through. I have, on occasions, started from one side and went around the whole thing and noticed that there was a bubble in the center. So I just like to work from one, to the end. And for anyone that is looking for more detailed tutorial information, I do have a how to iron on decoupage method video that I'll have linked down in the bottom. I'm going to show you a little tip. I'm doing this without the parchment paper. You do this with the parchment paper, but I want to show you the point, okay? So when you put your Mod Podge on here and you'll see like we get to the ends, it's not completely sealed. You want to make sure that you do have that seal before you go sanding off any excess. You want it as sealed as far over as it can be. So I like to take the iron, and again, I will do this with the parchment paper, and I will just kind of take the iron and go down, and it just guarantees that it seals that curvature where you have the Mod Podge. So whatever excess you are actually sanding off, it's not attached to your piece. And you can do this method with anything that is curved. On a side note, I've had someone ask me how long have I been using this piece of parchment paper because they use theirs over and over. A while. This piece of parchment paper has created many things. So it's probably one of the few things that I can say it gets reused over and over and over again. To finish off our coasters, I'm just going to pop these on the back here. I've used, what are they called? Cork pieces I get from Dollar Tree. I've absolutely used those. And if you're worried about these like popping off, take some tacky glue with a paintbrush and kind of put some extra around here. It will just ensure that this is going to stick on here well. You might need to do that once or twice. You could even put a little bit underneath of the adhesive here just to ensure that it's going to really stick on to the bottom of your coaster. And now let's seal over it. If you're looking for more decoupage inspiration, check out this video right here. And as always, people, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me today. And until next time.